How's it going, Chargers fans? Welcome back to another Los Angeles Chargers injury update here on the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Jameson Omar at Chargers Medical on Twitter. This is your wild card weekend playoff update for the Los Angeles Chargers. It'll be a little bit shorter today, but we did have some breaking news as of an hour or two ago about Mike Williams that we'll spend a little bit of time on, but we'll also dive into the Jaguars, talk a little bit about what injuries they've suffered and how that could possibly impact the matchup coming up tomorrow. So without further ado, let's jump into the injury report. So looking at the Chargers, this is honestly among the healthiest we've seen them for the season. It's reassuring to see this. Joey Bosa, Bryce Callahan, Xander Horvath, like some of the more recent injuries will be playing, at or near their full potential. The biggest question mark, or I guess now we have an answer to it, is Mike Williams down at their bottom. He's listed as questionable. We really don't know all that much about the injury. It just came out today that he had further imaging that showed a small fracture in his back, and he will be he's already been ruled out for the game against the Jaguars tomorrow. There's been a lot of speculation about whether they were hiding this, whether they knew it all along. I think honestly that's honestly not true. It's very likely that they had no idea, that they thought it was a contusion. The initial MRI and the initial X-ray were negative, and that's not all that uncommon, especially for a small fracture like we've seen in the back. These things are very hard to detect on X-ray. And MRI is better at looking at soft tissues than bone. So it's not uncommon that something like this could be picked up a little bit later once that fracture has been, there's some signs of healing around it that are a little bit more noticeable than just a simple fracture. It's not uncommon, but it is unfortunate because it means that he's rolled out this week in a way that if it was just soft tissue, he might have had a chance to play through. In terms of what that means moving forward, we really need more information. I saw some quotes online about 2 to 3 weeks. That seems to be about the case for this type of an injury. Really, the biggest concern we have is stability. So if the fracture is in a location where it could potentially make the vertebrae unstable, that's something that's risky for a player to play on because they could make it worse. And when you're dealing with any bone around the spinal cord, you don't want to take any risks like that because it's just totally not worth it. From the reports, it looks like it's not. It's in an area that can, potentially heal relatively quickly. We could potentially see him in the divisional round if the Chargers advance that far, but more comfortable with him playing in an AFC Championship or Super Bowl round if the Chargers, make it that far. So we'll have to wait for more information. I'm sure we'll get more after this week in terms of how he's progressing. But just unfortunate because that Mike Williams questionable is now for sure a Mike Williams out. And the Chargers are going to have to operate with, Joshua Palmer, Bandy, DeAndre Carter playing a bigger role. Thankfully, we have Donald Parham back in the fold, Gerald Everett. We're going to have to see some people step up this week next to Keenan Allen and make it work. But that's all the information we have up to the moment. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more context about how this all rolled out. And certainly I'll leave the questions about, why was he playing last week? All those questions for somebody else. It's not my area of expertise, but it's something that the pundits will be sure to talk about during the game and moving forward. Let's move on to the Jaguars, though. So let's look at their injury report here. It doesn't look like any of these players are expected to miss from my research. Trevor Lawrence, Jamal Agnew, Brendan Sheriff, some of the more notable names on this list. They all have been dealing with some of these injuries for the last couple of weeks. They're kind of minor nuisances, and I don't expect any of those players to be really hindered when it comes down to game time on Saturday. However, there are a few players of notable absence for the Jaguars, and these are players that have been placed on IR in the last few weeks. So I do want to mention them. The first one, and I apologize if I mispronounced this, but Dawoon Smoot, an edge who tore his Achilles a couple of weeks ago. Before that, he was leading the Jaguars in pressures or second in pressures behind Allen, and is a notable loss for them. That's a big edge rushing presence that will not be present and will hopefully, allow Justin Herbert potentially a little bit more time in the pocket or a little bit more mobility around. And we all know how good he can be when he has that. So it's something to note for the absence for this weekend. And then the other thing that is potentially even more notable is Cam Robinson, who is their starting left tackle. He is out with a meniscus injury, was put on IR a few weeks ago, and he will not play this weekend as well. The stand-in tackle, Walker Little, actually a fellow Stanford alumni. So I saw him play quite a bit during his college years. I believe he's a second-year pro, but this is his real first starting reps, as far as I'm aware. Left tackle is one of the hardest positions to play in the league. I think he's done okay the last few weeks, but again, it only takes one performance, and especially against a savvy veteran edge rusher like either Khalil Mack or Joey Bosa, that's certainly a matchup that the Chargers will want to target, and that could make the difference in the game. If Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence aren't able to scheme their way out of that or work their way past it, those players are game wreckers, and having a more novice left tackle is definitely a risk that was different from the Chargers matchup in week 3 until this matchup in the playoffs. Lastly, I just wanted to touch again on the banged up score. And I want to kind of end this on a more positive note. Obviously, this one hasn't been updated in the last couple of weeks, so the Chargers are most likely still hovering in this range, bottom of the NFL in terms of injury severity. But as we talked about in that Q&A episode from a few weeks ago, the best teams are able to weather these injuries. Some of the Patriots Super Bowl runs, in the early 2000s and mid 2000s were among, some of their most injured years as well, using the same metric. And so it's really not an excuse. But in order to combat that, you need to have good depth and you need to have a good culture. And I think, at least on the second part, the Chargers have made leaps and bounds over the last few years in terms of changing that culture, bringing in veterans, bringing in a winning mindset that will hopefully make a difference come Justin Herbert's first playoff run starting tomorrow against the Jaguars. So something to keep in mind on, injuries, that you can't just write them off. Some people will write off and say it's completely the next man up. That's not intentional, but in general, these things even out over time, and the good organizations are able to weather the storm. There's a chance that Mike Williams comes back at some point in the playoffs if the Chargers make a deep enough run. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that. So thank you for tuning in to another Guilty as Charged Los Angeles Chargers injury update. Again, my name is Jamison Omar at Chargers Medical on Twitter. Please give me a follow. There'll be more live time updates during tomorrow's game, and hopefully a couple more injury updates throughout the playoffs as the Chargers have the chance to move forward this week into the divisional round. So again, if you have any injury questions or anything like that, feel free to hit me up. I try to answer all the questions that I see when I do have the time, and it's been a great season interacting with you guys. So I hope we can get a few more weeks in as we move forward here. But until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.